Hello, everyone, and welcome to your second snap take of the day. It's OTA time. This OTA is unsurprisingly humongous since this will be the only OTA over the air update in Marvel Snap in the month of December. So we're going to go through every card change. We're going to say what tier it's in, what decks it goes in, and all that good stuff. Let's get started with Arishem, who is changing once more. Arishem is going from a 7/7 at the start of the game, +1 max energy, shuffle 15 random cards into your deck, to, including the new keyword game start, shuffle 12 new cards into your deck. On turn 3, get +1 max energy. So it's 3 less cards, but you only get the energy buff from turn 3 on. That's humongous. That's going to change the curve of these decks. Some of the most powerful and annoying things that Arishem decks would do would be playing Agent Coulson early, would be playing Loki early. Those two plays are now gone. And Arishem will therefore be A, more vulnerable to cards like Darkhawk and Cassandra Nova, which it already had trouble with, but B will have to wait longer to really get going and have a significantly less powerful early game. This is going to need a lot of rebuilds to the decks, or at least most of the Arishem decks. They're going to have to change how they play. They're going to have to change the cards they run. Do they have to do that day one immediately? No, I think we can try it as is. When it goes back to 12 cards, maybe it's still okay, but I think generally speaking, we're fairly likely to need a stronger lower curve here. However, the difference is the Thanos versions of Arishem don't really need to change much. Thanos comes with a built-in early game in having the Infinity Stones, right? There's 6 extra 1-drops in that deck. So now the deck is smaller, you're more likely to see those 1-drops, and everything makes more sense. I think Thanos Arishem is going to be the way to go, at least immediately for the card. We will eventually figure out other things to do and how it needs to be built right. It's going to take a few days to sort of get our heads around the sort of mid-game energy ramp that Arishem now causes instead of the early one. This is a really, really heavy rework of the card, one that a lot of the community will find necessary, but I don't think it's dead. I think it's still, honest to God, an S tier card. Losing 3 cards from the deck is absolutely pivotal, and I think makes up for it. It also shuffles new cards, by the way, so they're no longer going to give you duplicates of cards that are already in the deck. You're not going to run into an opponent with an Arishem Shang-Chi and a regular Shang-Chi, an Arishem Cosmo and a regular Cosmo, etc., etc. So this is, I think, going to alleviate a lot of the frustration in playing against Arishem, but I do think this is still going to end up being top-notch once we get there. I don't necessarily know if this was enough. We will see pretty quickly, because I don't think people are going to give up on Arishem. It's now a deck-building puzzle that people are going to build around and play with, and when that happens, we end up finding things pretty quickly. This is where I'm personally going to be starting. This is a King Venom version. King Venom does like a meta report over on his channel where he features a lot of top decks. I think this is basically where you want to be for Arishem. There's another card changed in the OTA here. It is Alioth, who goes down to a 6/9. We'll talk about him pretty soon. But I think this is fundamentally where we're going to want to be for the card. We're just going to sort of forego the early game, except for the Thanos Stones. We've got 6 1-drops, right? So we've got things to do on 1 and 2 as necessary, and then we can still Coulson or Copycat on 3, or we can still drop a Cull Obsidian on 3, and we should be perfectly fine. Or we can still Wave on 3, and then we should have extra energy. The Wave is the one card here I'm sort of skeptical of, because Wave on turn 2 meant that on turn 3 you would have enough energy to play your Thanos or Alioth or whatever. And that's no longer going to be the case because you can't wave on turn 2. So you can only wave on turn 3 fairly. Outside of that, though, this deck has like a 60% win rate, and I don't see that really going anywhere. This is fundamentally where I would imagine the Arishem archetype goes as of today and tomorrow until we start to figure out what to do for the early game in the other versions of the list. It's also possible that Arishem just says, I'm going to run a million fours, beat me that way. Hey, before we go on to the next card, we're hosting a tournament tomorrow. It is SJL versus Brookland. The winner of that tournament will go on December 22nd to face the winner of the Brookland tournament online. Brookland's an in-person event. SJL tournament is an online tournament. You can sign up by checking out patreon.com/snapjudgments or joining our Discord for more. But if you want to participate in Marvel Snap tournaments and see who truly the best Marvel Snap players are, 8 p.m. Eastern, December 13th. Be there. Our next change is Typhoid Mary. So she used to give the other cards in her location -1 power. The other cards everywhere -1 power. And she was updated to only be in her location. And it turns out she was probably too good that way. So now she's giving the other cards in her location -2 power. which to me means one thing, because this only went in one deck. It went to the Skaar Surtur deck, and that means that Skaar Surtur deck was still putting up too much stats. It was still too big, it was still too powerful, it was still doing too much, at least at lower levels. It's a deck that disappeared from the top of the Infinite leaderboard, but on the run up to Infinite and lower Infinite, it was still sort of killing things. This makes the deck worse and means the deck, if you're going to run Typhoid Mary, has to run Luke Cage. Absolutely must run Luke Cage, which is fine. I think the best versions were already running Luke Cage. This is going to lose the deck a few more games. It's going to take a couple percentage points off, but it doesn't really kill it. It's still fine, but there's a replacement card that comes for Typhoid Mary in January. His name is it's Ares. Ares is a 4/6 that looks at the top 3 cards of you and your opponent's deck, and whoever has higher power among those top 3 cards, Ares will get +6 power, so it'll be a 4/12. You just replace Typhoid Mare with that once it comes out in January, and you're totally fine. You're good to go. You don't stress it. You get the exact same thing. Um, Typhoid Mary is worse, but again, I think that it's a temporary worse, and it doesn't ultimately matter long term. I think this was a B tier card and is now down to a C tier card because it's going to be replaceable. Now, honestly, I think the problem was Typhoid Mary was too good and they're trying to sell us Ares at the end of January. And so they're weakening Typhoid Mary now to give people who want to play this deck more reason to buy Ares, which is traditionally how they do this kind of thing. But I have very little doubt that the Skaar Sorter deck was still a little bit above rate for them, and this is their way of bringing it back. Luke Skywalker, our Walker ITA, was the #1 player on the Infinite Leaderboard last season. No sense relitigating all that. This is the deck he played. This is the exact deck I would play if I was looking for this type of list. You run 2 1s, including one that makes a lot of the 4s 3s. You run which also helps with Cull Obsidian, which also can give you like a blow up Shadow King to draw. Juggernaut helps control the board. Shadow King helps control anything that gets too big. Surtur is still a 3/10 almost always, if not more. That can get up to a 3/16, right? Everything here makes perfect sense. The Luke Cage doesn't have to be played early. You can play it on the last turn of the game with, for example, Skaar and Juggernaut or Skaar and Shadow King, and still you can win the game that way. I don't know. I think this list is probably still one of the very best in Marvel Snap. It's just extraordinarily straightforward and simple, and so people don't really play it. But I think that this deck is the deck that got Typhoid Mary nerfed, and I think that it's still really good there. They're just tying Typhoid and Luke together more closely. Next up, we have Alioth, who goes from 6'10 to a 6'9, and yes, it's slightly worse, but I don't think that's the point. Both Toxic Soul King and MSL Chamo had these Wiccan decks that were running Surtur into Wiccan, into Arrow, into Alioth. And those decks were really, really powerful. They were near the top of the Infinite leaderboard last in this season. This is a way to basically break those decks. If Alioth is a 6'9 now, it doesn't go in those decks, or rather, Surtur doesn't go in those decks, and now you've removed a problem deck just cutting its legs out from under it. Those decks will still exist, right? There will be Surtur decks that try to Wiccan and play a bunch of big stuff, but they'll be vulnerable to Shang because they don't run Alioth anymore. And there will be Wiccan decks that run Alioth, but they won't run Surtur anymore because Surtur will no longer trigger that card. And thus everything is resolved and everything goes back to making sense, right? The balance is restored. Everything else that ran this card still runs it. It will lose an occasional more game. The 6'10 is important, right? But 6'9 still wins games. No, this isn't a buff because it won't be shanged. Your Alioth would basically never be getting shanged anyway. But this is still, it's still a nerf. You're going to lose a few more games. One deck goes away, but this is an S tier card. That is still an S tier card. I still think it's the best 6-cost card in Marvel Snap, at least unless Doom 2099 makes Doctor Doom be that card. We have Safety Blades, Eye of the Cobra here. This is a list I've been looking to feature and I have not yet on the channel. This is an example of what we can still do with Alioth, a deck that still runs him as basically its only top end. As a way to say when I have Prio, Alioth ensures I win. When I don't have Prio, Shang ensures I win. I've got Galacta and Wiccan to make things still too big, so your Alioth is still likely to be 12 power or more with Gwenpool, and you still have all these extra play patterns to win. Alioth is still going to be the top end of Arishem. It's still going to be the top end of Thanos. It's still going to be the top end of Wiccan. If you want 6 drops, that 6 drop is still most likely to end up being Alioth in Marvel Snap. And thus, here we are. Cool. All right. Please, before we go forward, hit that sub button if you're willing. This is our second video today. This is our, it's Thursday, and we did 2 videos on Monday, 2 videos on Tuesday, 2 videos on Thursday. We cover Marvel Snap more thoroughly than anyone. If you want the most Marvel Snap coverage and those Marvel Snap decks, hit that sub button. We are also giving away a Galacta this week. All you have to do is sub, like, and comment on this video. I'll tell you what to comment in a couple slides. But Enchantress is back to a 4/6. There was a point when Enchantress was a 4/4 and they buffed her to a 4/6, and then she became one of the best cards in the game, and she was in every deck, and that's exactly when the Stature Black Bolt Darkhawk deck took off with the old Zabu, the 2/2 Zabu, with the ongoing of -1, and this was one of the most broken, powerful cards in the game. They made it a 4/5, and it slowly disappeared. I see Enchantress once every 2 weeks. Um, I think she can force herself into some Wiccan Zabu shells now, particularly because Darkhawk, Iron Man, uh, Gore, and Darkhawk, Iron Man, Gore, and Ajax are such powerful cards. She can completely shut down a Luke Cage and those Affliction decks. So I do think she has value. But I don't think the issue has really been her power. I think Rogue just does her job way power and is usually way cheaper. If that's why this has to go in like Zabu and Wiccan shells, right? You need to find a way to mitigate that extra cost so that the extra power becomes more value. Um, I do think that she's going to be really powerful and see a lot of play, especially over the weekend, over the next couple of days. I assume we're going to be seeing an absolute ton of Enchantress. We'll see by the beginning of next week if Enchantress is still really popular. Um, if it's not, right, like it's entirely possible this just disappears. But I would, if I'm like relying on ongoing, not play it for a couple days. Um, this deck's main home may still be Arishem. The deck that played it most was Arishem, because Arishem don't want to deal with your Iron Man bullshit, and 4 cost isn't nearly as much. 4 is now an even better cost for Arishem. That still may be its main home. I'm curious to see if there's any other places. We're going to see a Sarah deck. I think this goes from a C to a B. I think the difference between 5 power and 6 power and a 4 drop is humongous. I can play a 1/5, right? I can play Hydra Bob. I can even play Martyr if I'm feeling feisty. So getting a 5 out of 4, it better be game winning, right? And I just don't think Enchantress crossed that threshold. I think as a 4/6, she's enough better that I think she does go up a tier. Now, this is a deck, a Toxic Sarah list that I think would really, really enjoy Enchantress. Basically, you're using it for Typhoid, Mary, and Lizard on your side of the board, though Luke has the same synergy there, and you have the ability to turn off your opponent's crap. That's it. That's all this really does here. There's enough stuff that's powerful for this list that I like the extra stats that Enchantress has a little bit over Shang-Chi, and I think that because US Agent can handle the things that Shang-Chi would hit more or less, and from there we just go with Enchantress, although we do have to be careful not to hit our US Agent or Man-Thing or Luke. Um, so placement is important, but if you can get that placement down, I do think that this is a powerful card in this list, particularly with Zabu in the list, because if it's 3 from Zabu and then 2 from Sarah, it's now one of the best cards in Marvel Snap. So that's where I land on this Enchantress in this Toxic Sarah list. I think that Sarah has become underplayed again, and this is still a powerful place to be. Next up, we have Black Widow, who goes from a 3/4 to a 3/3. This is the Goon Knight nerf because Goon Knight is one of the best decks. You're going to see Goon Knight on the next slide if you don't know what I'm talking about, which means Darkhawk is still performing. Goon Knight goes in Darkhawk, and Darkhawk goes in other decks, but Black Widow goes in all of them because it turns out stopping a draw is insanely strong. We say that all the time. That's why Korg and Rocksled are so good. If you can make them draw a rock, you stop the draw. If they draw a Widow's Bite, they've lost. Well, if you hit them with a Widow's Bite, they've lost a draw. That lost draw changes Marvel Snap completely. It's insanely strong. I don't think neither. I don't think either deck ends up cutting Black Widow at all, but losing a power makes the card worse. It was a B tier card, like a high B tier card. It is still a high B tier card. I don't think anything really changes here. This is Goon Knight. I know it says Good Night. I don't know how to type, and the deck hasn't changed, so I haven't updated it. This is one of the easiest decks to get into if you are looking for a powerful high series powerful deck, because all you really need is Fenrir's Wolf, Darkhawk, and Proxima, and then you're into Goon Knight, right? Like you have the deck made. So it's 2 Series 5 cards and 1 Series 4, and it's one of the best decks in the game. Cam Best made it. This is, I think, the deck that got it nerfed. Black Widow is really good here, right? Like Black Widow says, I can make myself a big Darkhawk even when I shouldn't. Korg says I can make myself a big Darkhawk, and these combinations are just strong, right? Like if I can stop 2 of your draws, I win the game of Marvel Snap. The end. Next up, we have Frigga. I knew Frigga was going to get updated. She is now at 3/4. 3/3 was really bad stats. 3/4 is okay. It's not good, but it's okay. So this is great with anti-venom and move bounce already, and now it's just better with those decks. I don't think this gives it new homes, but in the decks it's good and they're happy. I think this is a solid B tier. I don't think this is a B plus like Black Widow, but it's a B tier card. But it's similar enough. I think Frigga's great. Um, if you like anti-venom or move bounce. And if you don't have those decks, then you probably don't play Frigga as a general rule. But look, there's worse things to do than would like a 4/8 is good stats, right? So that's basically what you get out of playing this with Hydra Bob, and then you get the extra 1/5 to play also. Like that's for just reasonably good stats. So I think, oh, excuse me, now it'll be a 4/9, and you get an extra 5 stats. So you're getting 5/13 of stats. It's top of the line stats. You're not sad. The best deck for this list, bar none, is Sizer's Bounce Move. He played this for the hot location and was wildly impressed with Penny Parker. You don't need Penny for this list. We're going to do a full breakdown of this list and card replacement and so on in tomorrow morning's video where we do the top 10 decks after the OTA. So, for the time being, this is probably the best deck in Marvel Snap, and Frigga's in it. So therefore, she's at least a valuable card, right? If you don't have Frigga, you still play it, but the list is worse. If you do have Frigga, the list is better in the best list. Therefore, she's a good card. Nice and simple. Cool. Hey, my season pass question, and there's still plenty more cards to get through, is what's your OTA review? If you want to win Galacta, answer in the comments and be subscribed. Shuri goes from a 4/1 to a 4/3, which is whoa. So the first thing to say is this is a huge buff. That's a lot more power. The second thing to note is it doesn't work with Ravonna anymore. So if you were trying to do that, don't. I don't think this is going to bring Shuri Red Skull back, although there are early Series 3 players who should be playing Shuri Red Skull stuff. But I do think Shuri Kitty is a real list. There's one I was waiting to show that we're going to see on the next slide that I'll do a full review of later. We're going to see what that kind of deck does. I do think that's real, and I do think as a 4/3, it might just start to see some play in some more decks. Perhaps it could even replace, and I'm not sure if this is going to be the case, but perhaps it can replace Gwenpool in some decks that are running both Gwenpool and Galacta, and you can run Shuri in place of that for some decks. I think that would be an interesting way to go, especially because a lot of those decks run Zabu anyway, and Shuri's just really strong, right? Like if you want to run Panther, Galacta Panther is great, Shuri Panther is great. You can try that as a way to steal a lane. I think this is still a B tier card, but it wasn't played, and this is going to remind people that Shuri exists and make good players play it, which means it's going to be relevant once more. Ava has this Kitty Slam deck. I played this on stream 2 days ago at this point, and I think that this is exactly like kind of where we want to be for Shuri, where like we can go Shuri into Kitty, a Kitty we've pumped a bunch of times and go to town, or we can go Shuri into Vision. And honestly, just having the extra power on Shuri is so important. Because that Shuri lane, if I move that Vision or I play that Kitty elsewhere, can still manage enough power with an Alioth, with a Cosmo, etc., to be a competitive lane, not one that my opponent barely has to do anything with to win. And I think that's really cool. I can also like move a card and drop a Shadow King there, which is really good. And now that's a 5 power lane that I've taken a bunch of power off them for. I think that this is a very, very good change, and this list in addition is really powerful. It's very hard to know where the power of this list is going to end up between the Spider, between Kitty, between Vision, and therefore I think this is really good. I'm very excited for this list. Lockjaw goes from 4/4 to a 4/5. I don't really care. I'm hoping someone proves me wrong. Actually, maybe I'm not hoping someone proves me wrong. Lockjaw metas tend to be miserable. But Lockjaw has always been either completely broken, one of the best cards in Marvel Snap, or totally mid and barely played. I think it's mid, and I don't think an extra power is what makes it not mid. Again, 4/5 is a really, really rough look as far as cost to power ratio goes. C tier card, it doesn't really have a home. If you want to try it, you can try it in this type of Thanos deck if you feel like it. Phastos and Psylocke are musts here. Phastos says the stones might be free, or Lockjaw might cost one less, which are both important in that like they let you get Lockjaw going sooner, and Psylocke says I can get Lockjaw out in 3. If you can do those things, you have enough power to win. If you can't, then you just sort of don't play Lockjaw, move on with life. Sometimes Thanos draws air though, and Lockjaw gives you a chance to turn your air into real cards, which is a nice place to be. I don't know. Without like Lockjaw, Thanos was better when Thanos was in the deck, and now without Thanos in the deck, I feel like I have to run a little too heavy of a curve for it to really work. So, not for me. But this is a place that you can try. We have the weirdest change of the OTA. We have Stormbreaker go from an 0/1 to an 0/3. Okay. They don't want to put extra power on Beta Ray Bill because Beta Ray Bill would then double the extra power he gets. So they stuck it on Stormbreaker, which is going to turn this into, if you see both cards, into a 15 power card, but one that you have to build a whole deck around in order to play. You need Eitri, you need other things. Eitri has worked really well with classic Thor and not nearly as well with Beta Ray Bill because 4 is an awkward cost slot, right? There's just a lot of other powerful things you could do on 4. However, O3 is a lot, and that probably pushes this back to some prominence. I don't think these decks are good. I think they're too finicky, but this is a powerful thing to do. I think Bill was a C tier card that probably gets up to B tier and just dropped to Series 4. So if you got King Eitri and you're looking to play one of these lists, give it a try. Also, if you check this morning's video where I have the number 1 deck, deck 4 in that video is a Thor's deck, a much simpler Thor's deck than the one we're going to look at. This feels like a buff to Eitri, not moving the needle. They released King Eitri and he didn't do anything. They moved Beta Ray Bill to Series 4. This is a cool archetype that they want to be successful, so they buffed it a little bit, which is a good place to be. I'm not in love with it, but here's a version of a Thor's deck. This is the coolest Thor's deck. I don't think it's necessarily the best. I think the one from this morning might be easier to play, but this is a really cool Thor's deck that's pretty happy to have the Stormbreaker be an O3 because like you can drop it, drop a Misery on it and then Phoenix Force in, and now you have an 8 instead of a 6 on Phoenix Force. A moving 8 power card, you just made Vision that gave you a 24 power card, right? Like that's all pretty good. So there is stuff to like here. Um, is this going to move the needle and make this a meta deck? I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked if Thor's is a meta deck, but it is better. The version from this morning, by the way, is a Hitmonkey version if you want to check that out. This is the biggest change of the OTA for me, outside of, I guess, Arishem. This is Cerebro, becomes a 2-0. I think Cerebro is going to be an A tier card. I think this is the sleeper. People aren't going to talk about this enough. People aren't going to focus on this enough. I think Cerebro jumps to A tier. That you can play this with Mystique on turn 5 is incredible. That Cerebro 3 just has it now a 2-drop that they can play and just not worry about it, set it and forget it. You can play 2 3s on turn 4. You can play this with a you can play this second on top of a Sentinel and you're just going to town. Um, 1 cost with Ravonna is insane. If I can get a 1 cost Cerebro going, I feel like I win that game 90% of the time. I can play Cerebro with almost anything. Like I'm in love with this change. I think this change is absolutely pivotal and huge. I would probably cut either Shadow King or what is it? Shadow King or Invisible Woman, unless Enchantress is everywhere, and just run Mystique at this point because I think Cerebro Mystique is just so cheap at this point. It's crazy. You can consider Ravonna. This is the last Cerebro I had a lot of success with, so I wanted to feature it again. I got to game 5 of a goal of an Infinite Conquest with it. I had a lot of success on ladder. The Molwyn version is really great and super powerful. This was like our precursor to Gambit being in every freaking deck. Shit, I could probably figure out how to run Fenris Wolf in this list with Negasonic and Gambit and just go to town. I'm in love. I'm telling you, I'm in love. This is going to be so good. Play this list, fam. Play this list or play versions of Cerebro. It's going to be meta. 2-cost Cerebro is insanely strong. Finally, our last change is Elsa Bloodstone, who becomes a 3-4, and that's good. She's always been a low B, high C. She may be higher now with Galacta. I think she's still probably almost exactly an 80, like a C plus B minus card. Um, there are real homes for this though, and they're giving her to everyone as a free daily login over the Christmas break, which is a free Series 5 card. And this is a good buff for that, but it's not great. It does have a deck, exactly 1 deck. I think it goes in the modern versions of the Cook, which I think might be a real meta deck. If you bought Mockingbird and opened Sasquatch, then you buy Galacta and you got Elsa for free, and you buy the season pass regularly, right? So you have Gwen and Galacta and Hope, then all of a sudden you have a top tier deck that you can play, and that's pretty cool. Kitty dropped to Series 4. So, sorry, Kitty's dropped to Series 3. Jeff is Jeff, so most people have Jeff, but Jeff is ridiculously unimportant in this. Elsa, they're giving us Hope, Galacta, and Gwenpool Series Pass. They just sold Mockingbird, and Sasquatch is in Spotlights right now. You can have this deck tomorrow if you spent and paid attention wisely, and this is, I think, a tier 1 deck. So that's pretty cool that they're giving us a card that is in a tier 1 deck, even if that tier 1 deck is expensive, if you didn't know this was how you were going to go about doing it. Still, super, super top-notch deck that I'm really excited for. Really, like, genuinely, this is a very, very cool place to be. I think Jeff might be better as Zabu now that I think about it a little bit more. But yeah, that's where we are. This is awesome. That's it. That's our OTA. I think this is a really good one. Is it as big as I wanted, as pivotal as I wanted? for the last one of the month? No, I don't think so. But I do think the meta is in a good place. I think there's a lot of powerful decks and a lot of powerful cards coming that will shake things up. Particularly Doom 2099 and Rocket and Groot will be huge. And Victoria Hand coming at the beginning of next month will give us a new archetype before the patch. So the meta should stay relatively flexible for the rest of the month, and I think I'm comfortable with that. But I did expect something more here, something bigger, something more earth shattering, a card becoming meta that wasn't before. Although that might just be Cerebro, because Cerebro's sick. Certain tiers of support on our Patreon come with on there. Thanks. If you're interested in that tournament, check out this Patreon. If you're interested in the $10 tier, you can get thanked every video and an exclusive video every week. I'm going to fly through these because, well, this is the second video of the day, and I spoke a lot to y'all on the first one. So thank you to Abigail Gieselman, Turbo, and Regardless, David G. Winfield, Dirty Casual, Danton, LAB, FaThorNewman, Good Dog Gamer, Ink, I Am Frostman, Jane, Everything Poker, Prime Ryan, Ryan Burke, Ryan Wood, Kertix Lee, Query, Kazushi, Archangel 3K, Black Dahlia, Parafrost, The Goat Seeker, Hollowed, Quidpro, Joe Snap, Sisters, Joe Fat Nick, Mr. Kerfuffle, Cable, Ginger Prime, Philip Rakovich, Haplo, Kenny Loggins of the Danger Zone, Rubs, the Beza, Black Jeebus 23, Exorcine, Skippy G, Rhyming Friends, Jessica Gamble, Tommy Nyquist, King of Bros, Bro, The Great Kazoo, Ketsu Hoda, Luna, Chris Corbin, John Q, Jim McHugh, Clarm, Colonel Forbin, Yistout, 8th Sage, Models Mod Supreme, Green Goblin, Unibot, Flan 56, Stephen, Brian Coffin, Tristan H. Martin, Jason B, Jake, Timmy Tolino, The Fuzzy Dunlop, Spectrum X, Hoot, Matt H, DJ McAjinx, No Freaking Flex, Ocularis, Mr. Craig Sterry, BG, Zodrex, the King of Canada, Danman Falcon, Jonesy, one and only two ties, the Green Lord as the Pirate King Tuccrr, and of course, Gunny T, where the T stands for. Check this morning's video. Don't miss out on the #1 deck. Tomorrow, I got the top 10 decks for you. Ring that notification bell. Don't miss it. Peace.